He almost drove away, until a dying man whispered 4 words that changed everything. A dusty road under the burning midday sun. A dying man whispers, "Save my wife." And the only one who hears him is a stranger the world would never trust. He could have driven away. No one would have known. But he stopped. And that one choice pulled him into a story where kindness was questioned, judged, and nearly destroyed, until the truth left everyone silent. The road stretched out like a ribbon of dust and heat, cutting through miles of dry Texas land that looked like it had forgotten what rain felt like. Noon sat heavy in the sky, pressing down on everything, on the cracked asphalt, on the scattered brush, on the rusted fences leaning tiredly along the roadside. Even the air felt thick, like it didn't want to move. Jamal Carter wiped his forearm across his forehead, smearing sweat and dust together. His truck rattled beneath him, the engine humming in a way that told him it had seen too many years and too many miles. The AC had given up sometime around 2019, and today, like most days, he drove with the windows down, letting the hot wind slap against his face. He was thinking about small things, the kind of things a man thinks about when life has trained him not to expect too much. Whether he had enough bread left for a sandwich, whether the landlord would give him another week before asking about rent again, whether his back would stop aching long enough for him to get a full night's sleep. Nothing about this day felt different. Nothing warned him. Until he saw it. At first, it was just a glint, sunlight catching on something unnatural in the ditch up ahead. Then, as he got closer, the shape came into focus. A vehicle, upside down. Jamal slowed without meaning to, his foot easing off the gas. Dust swirled behind his truck as it rolled forward at a crawl. The vehicle was a luxury SUV, sleek, silver, expensive enough that it didn't belong out here on a forgotten stretch of road like this. One of the tires was still spinning slowly, creaking as it turned. Thin trails of smoke curled up from the crumpled front end. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. He knew this scene, not from experience, but from stories. A black man, alone, on a road like this, standing next to a wrecked luxury car. It didn't matter what he was doing. It mattered how it looked. Jamal's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. Empty road behind him. No other cars. No witnesses. His heart picked up just a little. "Keep driving," he muttered under his breath. That was the smart move. Call it in when you hit a signal. Let someone else handle it. Someone who didn't have to explain himself. Someone who wouldn't be questioned first and believed last. His foot pressed down on the gas again. The truck moved forward. The wreck started to shrink in the side mirror. 10 feet. 20. 30. Then, a sound. So faint, he almost convinced himself he imagined it. A voice. Jamal froze. His foot hovered over the pedal as his mind raced to catch up with what his ears had just heard. The wind rushed through the open window, carrying dust and heat, but beneath it, there it was again. A broken whisper. "Please." Jamal's chest tightened. He stared straight ahead, gripping the wheel like it might anchor him to the decision he was trying to make. This wasn't his problem. That thought came quick, sharp, familiar. It's not your problem. Nobody would blame you. Nobody would even know you were here. His jaw clenched. Another sound came from behind him, carried faintly through the open air. This time, there was no mistaking it. "Save my wife." The words didn't just reach his ears. They landed somewhere deeper. Jamal closed his eyes for half a second, and in that half second, something old and stubborn stirred inside him. Something that had nothing to do with logic or fear or how things looked. Something his mother used to say. "If you're the one who's there, then you're the one who's supposed to do something." He let out a slow breath. Then he made the mistake. He looked in the mirror again. The SUV sat there in the dust, silent and broken. No movement, no one else coming. Just that faint curl of smoke rising into the empty sky. No one else was going to stop. Jamal shook his head once like he was trying to shake the thought loose. "Man, don't do this," he whispered. But his hands had already made the decision. The truck slowed. His foot came off the gas. And then, almost without thinking, he turned the wheel. Gravel crunched under his tires as he eased the truck onto the shoulder. Dust billowed around him, wrapping the world in a hazy, golden cloud. For a moment, everything went quiet except for the ticking engine and the distant hum of heat. Jamal sat there, hands still on the wheel. He stared ahead. This was the moment. The last chance to change his mind. He could still drive off. Pretend he didn't hear anything. Pretend he didn't see anything. Go back to his small house, his quiet life, his problems that stayed the same size every day. He could stay safe. Instead, he opened the door. The heat hit him first, like stepping into an oven. The smell followed. Burnt rubber, hot metal, something sharp that made the back of his throat tighten. Jamal stepped out slowly, closing the truck door behind him. The world felt too still, too quiet. He glanced once more down the empty road in both directions. Nothing. No cars. No help, just him. And whatever waited inside that wreck. Each step toward the SUV felt heavier than the last. Gravel crunched under his boots. The closer he got, the worse it looked. The windshield was shattered, glass scattered across the dirt like glittering shards. The front end was crushed inward, metal bent and folded like it had been made of paper. The faint sound came again, weaker now. "Please!" Jamal swallowed hard. "I got you," he said, though his voice didn't sound as steady as he wanted it to. He reached the vehicle and paused just long enough to take it in. Then he moved. He bent down, peering inside through the broken driver's side window. An older white man, late 60s, maybe older, was pinned behind the steering wheel. Blood darkened the front of his shirt, spreading in slow, uneven patches. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. But his eyes were open. And they locked onto Jamal like he was the only thing keeping him tethered to this world. "Hey," Jamal said, dropping to a knee. "Stay with me, sir. You hear me?" The man's lips trembled. It took effort, real effort, for him to form the words. "My wife." Jamal followed his gaze. On the passenger side, a woman lay slumped against the crushed door. Smaller. Still. Blood traced a thin line down from her temple, disappearing into her hair. Jamal's stomach dropped. "Is she breathing?" he asked quickly. "I can't reach her." The man's voice cracked. "Please, save my wife first." The words hung in the air, fragile and desperate. Jamal felt something shift inside his chest. Not fear, not hesitation. Something heavier. He nodded once, more to himself than to the man. "I'm here," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." And as he moved around the wreck, preparing to crawl inside, one thought cut through everything else. Clear and undeniable. This was the moment that would change everything. He just didn't know yet. Whether it would ruin his life or redefine it. Jamal didn't give himself time to answer that question. He moved. The metal groaned as he pulled at the rear door, the only part of the SUV that wasn't completely crushed. It resisted at first, then gave just enough for him to wedge his shoulder in and force it open. The smell inside hit him harder. Gasoline, hot plastic, and something else underneath it all. Something metallic. Blood. "Stay with me," Jamal said, though he wasn't sure if he was talking to the man, the woman, or himself. He climbed into the back seat, careful where he placed his hands, though there was no avoiding the glass. It crunched beneath his palms, biting into his skin. He ignored it. Pain was secondary now. Everything was secondary. He leaned over the seat, reaching toward the woman. Up close, she looked even more fragile. Her skin was pale beneath the streaks of blood, her breathing so shallow it was almost invisible. Jamal pressed 2 fingers gently to her neck. For a second, there was nothing. Then, a faint pulse. Weak, but there. "She's alive," Jamal said quickly. The man let out a sound that wasn't quite a sob, wasn't quite a breath. Something in between. "Thank God." Jamal exhaled slowly, steadying himself. "All right," he muttered. "All right. We got a chance." He pulled off his work jacket first, tossing it aside in the cramped space, then his shirt. The fabric was rough, worn thin from years of use, but it was clean enough. He wadded it up, pressing it firmly against the woman's temple where the blood was coming from. "Hold on, ma'am," he said softly. "Just hold on a little longer." The SUV creaked beneath his weight, a reminder of how unstable everything was. Every second felt borrowed. Jamal shifted, reaching into his pocket with one hand while keeping pressure on the wound with the other. He pulled out his phone and glanced at the screen. 1 bar. Barely. Come on," he muttered as he dialed. The call rang once, twice, then static. A voice broke through, faint and broken. 911, what is your emergency?" "There's been an accident," Jamal said quickly, raising his voice just enough to push through the interference. "Miller Road, about 8 miles past the county line. 2 people injured. Bad. We need an ambulance now." The line crackled. The voice on the other end said something he couldn't make out. "I said Miller Road," Jamal repeated, louder this time. "Silver SUV rolled over. 2 victims, 1 unconscious, 1 trapped." More static, then silence. The call dropped. Jamal stared at the phone for a split second, jaw tightening. Damn it! He didn't know if they heard him. He didn't know if help was coming. He didn't know how long they had. He shoved the phone back into his pocket and refocused. "Sir?" he said, leaning forward so the man could see him. "What's your name?" The man's eyes fluttered, struggling to stay open. Richard. "All right, Richard. I'm Jamal. I'm going to stay with you, all right? You're not alone." Richard swallowed hard, his breathing uneven. "My wife. I've got her," Jamal said. "I'm holding the bleeding. She's still with us." Richard's eyes shifted weakly toward the passenger side, then back to Jamal. "Please," he whispered again. "Don't let her." Jamal nodded firmly, even though the man might not see it clearly. "I hear you," he said. "I'm not letting anything happen to her. You focus on breathing, all right? Stay with me." The seconds dragged. The heat pressed down harder. Sweat rolled down Jamal's back, mixing with dust and the faint sting of the cuts on his hands. He could feel the blood from the woman's wound soaking through the fabric, warming his fingers. He adjusted his grip, careful not to apply too much pressure, not too little. "Talk to me, Richard," he said, keeping his voice steady. "What do you do?" The question seemed to catch the man off guard. His brow furrowed slightly, like he was reaching for something far away. "Engineer," he murmured. "Bridges." Jamal gave a small nod. "That's good. That's real good. Means you're used to holding things together, right?" A faint flicker passed through Richard's expression, something like recognition. Used to. You still do, Jamal said. You're doing it right now. Just keep breathing, in and out. Richard's chest rose unevenly. In and out, Jamal repeated. Minutes passed like that, slow, heavy, every second stretching longer than it should. Jamal kept talking, asking questions, anything to keep the man conscious. Got family? He asked. Richard nodded faintly. A son, Jonathan. Where's he at? New York? Jamal glanced toward the empty road outside. Figures. All right, Jamal said. He'll be here soon. You just gotta hold on until then. Richard's eyes closed for a moment. Don't let her die, he whispered again. Jamal tightened his jaw. I won't. He didn't know if that was a promise he could keep, but it was the only one he could give. The smell of gasoline grew stronger. Jamal noticed it this time, not as background, but as a warning. He glanced toward the front of the vehicle. A thin line of fluid was dripping steadily from beneath the engine, pooling slowly in the dirt. Come on, he muttered under his breath. The sun beat down harder, turning the inside of the SUV into an oven. The air felt thinner with every breath. Still no sirens. Still no sign of help. Jamal shifted again, checking the woman's pulse. Still there. Still weak. He adjusted the cloth, pressing it more firmly. You're doing good, he said softly, even though she couldn't hear him. You're doing real good. Richard made a faint sound. Jamal leaned closer. You still with me? He asked. A slight nod. Barely. That's what I'm talking about, Jamal said. You don't quit on me now. Not after all those bridges you built. For a moment, the corner of Richard's mouth twitched. Then, a sound in the distance. Jamal froze. At first, it was faint, almost imagined. Then it grew. A low, rising wail cutting through the stillness. Sirens. Jamal let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Hey, he said quickly, his voice lifting just a little. You hear that? That's for you. That's help coming. Richard's eyes fluttered again, trying to focus. They're coming, Jamal said. You made it. Just hold on a little longer. The sirens grew louder, echoing across the open land. Dust kicked up in the distance as vehicles approached, first a flash of red, then white. Jamal didn't move, didn't relax, not yet. He kept his hand pressed firmly against the woman's wound, steady as he could make it. Because he knew something. When those sirens got closer, when those doors opened, when people stepped out and saw him here, the story could change. Fast, and not in his favor. He looked down at his hands, stained dark with blood that wasn't his, then back at the road. The sirens were almost here, and Jamal Carter had no idea whether the next few minutes would save him or destroy everything he had left. The sirens came in fast, too fast. 1 second they were distant, stretched thin across the empty land, and the next, they were right there, tearing through the quiet like something urgent and unforgiving. Jamal didn't move. He stayed exactly where he was, one hand pressed firmly against Evelyn's wound, the other bracing himself against the broken frame of the car. His breathing was steady, but his chest felt tight, like something was closing in around him. Dust exploded across the road as the first vehicle, a county sheriff's car, skidded to a stop. Tires screamed against gravel, doors flew open, 2 officers stepped out, both white, both scanning the scene fast, trained eyes taking in every detail at once. The wreck, the smoke, the man inside the car, and then Jamal, a black man, covered in blood, half inside a luxury SUV, For a brief moment, everything slowed. Jamal saw it happen. That shift. Not in words, not in actions, in their eyes. "Step away from the vehicle!" one of the officers shouted, his hand already resting near his holster. Jamal blinked once, then carefully lifted his head. "I'm helping them," he said, keeping his voice calm, steady. "She's still bleeding. I need to—" "I said step away!" The officer barked louder this time, moving closer. "Now!" The second officer circled slightly to the side, positioning himself with a clearer line of sight. Jamal froze, not out of fear, out of understanding. He had seen this before. He knew how fast things could turn. Slowly, very slowly, he removed his hand from the woman's head. The cloth stayed in place, soaked through but still holding pressure. He raised both hands, palms open. "I'm not going anywhere," Jamal said quietly. "But if I move too fast, she's going to start bleeding again." The officers exchanged a glance. Behind them, the ambulance roared up, followed by a fire truck. More boots hit the ground, more voices, more movement. But the focus, at least for that first critical moment, stayed on Jamal. "What's your name?" the first officer demanded. "Jamal Carter." "What are you doing here, Mr. Carter?" Jamal hesitated just long enough for it to matter. "I stopped," he said. "I saw the car. I heard them." The officer's eyes flicked to the blood on Jamal's hands. "You know these people?" "No, sir." That answer hung in the air longer than it should have. "No," the officer repeated, slower this time. "So, you don't know them, but you're inside their vehicle?" "I told you," Jamal said, still calm. "I heard him calling for help. I crawled in from the back. She was bleeding bad." A paramedic pushed past them at that moment, kneeling beside the driver's side. "We got a male, pinned, conscious, but fading," he called out. Another paramedic rushed to the passenger side, carefully reaching in to assess Evelyn. Jamal lowered his hand slightly, but didn't move forward again. Didn't interfere, didn't argue. He just stood there, waiting. The first officer stepped closer, his tone quieter now, but not softer. "Sir, I need you to step back from the vehicle and come with me." Jamal glanced once at Evelyn, at the cloth he had wedged against her wound, at the faint rise and fall of her chest. "She needs pressure on that," he said. "I've been holding it for—" "We've got it from here," the paramedic cut in, already taking over, replacing Jamal's makeshift compress with proper gauze. Jamal nodded once. Then he stepped back, slow, measured, every movement deliberate. He walked toward the officer, hands still slightly raised, blood drying across his fingers. Behind him, tools whirred to life. Metal cutters bit into the car frame. Voices overlapped. Medical terms, instructions, urgency. Life and death continued. But Jamal had already been moved out of that world. Now he stood on the edge of another one. The officer guided him a few feet away from the wreck, just far enough to separate him from the chaos, but not far enough to let him out of sight. "Turn around for me," the officer said. Jamal did. "Just a precaution," the officer added, though his tone didn't quite match the words. Jamal didn't respond. He felt the quick, practiced pat-down. Nothing aggressive, nothing rough, but not friendly either. Just procedure. Always procedure. "You got any ID on you?" Jamal nodded toward his truck. "In the glove box." The officer glanced in that direction, then back at him. "You stay right here." Jamal stayed. Of course he did. He watched as they pulled Richard from the vehicle first, securing him onto a stretcher. The old man's face was pale, his body limp now. No more words. No more whispers. Then Evelyn. More careful. More fragile. Jamal leaned forward slightly, just enough to see. The paramedic paused for a second, adjusting the bandage. That pressure you had on her, he muttered, almost to himself. That probably kept her alive. Jamal exhaled slowly. For the first time since he stopped his truck, something inside him loosened. Just a little. The ambulance doors slammed shut. Sirens rose again. And just like that, they were gone. Dust followed behind them, drifting slowly back down to the earth. The road fell quiet again. Too quiet. Jamal stood there, alone with the officers now, the adrenaline draining from his body, leaving behind something heavier. The first officer scribbled something into a small notebook. "All right, Mr. Carter," he said, not looking up. "We're going to need you to come down to the station. Give a full statement." Jamal nodded. "I figured." The officer finally looked at him. There was something different in his expression now. Not quite trust, not quite suspicion, something in between. "You did the right thing. Stopping," he said, after a pause. Jamal met his eyes. "Didn't feel like it," he replied quietly. The officer didn't answer that. Instead, he closed his notebook with a soft snap. "Let's go." Jamal turned toward his truck, the heat hitting him again, the dust clinging to his skin. He glanced once down the road where the ambulance had disappeared. 2 strangers. 2 lives. Gone from his hands. And now, whatever came next, it was his. The hospital sat at the edge of town like something forgotten. Brick walls faded by years of sun, windows reflecting a sky that didn't seem to camera what happened inside. It wasn't large. It wasn't modern. But it was the only place within 50 miles where people went when things went wrong. Jamal pulled his truck into the visitor lot and cut the engine. For a moment, he didn't move. The silence hit him first. No sirens. No shouting. No crunch of glass beneath his hands. Just the ticking sound of his engine cooling and the faint hum of fluorescent lights coming from somewhere inside the building. He looked down at his hands. The blood had dried in thin, dark lines across his skin. It sat there like a reminder of what he had done and of how it looked. He reached into the passenger seat, grabbed an old rag, and wiped his palms as best he could. It didn't do much. The stains were stubborn, just like everything else. Jamal stepped out of the truck and closed the door quietly, as if the world inside might break if he made too much noise. The automatic doors slid open as he approached. Cool air rushed out to meet him. Inside, everything changed. The light was too bright, too clean. The floors shined. The walls were pale, almost colorless. The smell of antiseptic hung in the air, sharp and sterile. Jamal felt it immediately. That shift again. Not loud, not obvious, but there. People looked at him. Not everyone. But enough. A man in work boots, dust on his jeans, cuts on his hands, a face still carrying the heat of the road. He didn't belong here. He knew it. And they knew it. Jamal walked up to the front desk, where a middle-aged woman sat behind a computer screen, typing something without looking up. "Excuse me," he said. She glanced up briefly, her eyes moving over him quickly, taking in the clothes, the hands, the details that people noticed before they ever asked a question. "Yes?" "There was an accident on Miller Road," Jamal said. "They brought 2 people in. I just wanted to check. Are you family?" she asked, cutting him off before he could finish. The question came fast, automatic. Jamal paused. "No, ma'am." Something changed. It was small. But it was there. Her posture straightened just a little. Her tone cooled. "Then you'll need to have a seat," she said, already looking back at her screen. Someone will update you if necessary. If necessary. Jamal nodded once. Thank you. He stepped away from the desk and moved toward the waiting area. Plastic chairs lined the walls. A television mounted high in the corner played a daytime talk show with the volume turned low. A few people sat scattered around, heads down, hands clasped, eyes fixed on nothing. Waiting. Jamal chose a seat near the wall. He sat down slowly, resting his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped together in front of him. The room felt colder than it should. Time moved differently here. Minutes stretched. Voices came and went. Doctors passed through with quick steps and serious expressions. Nurses spoke in low tones. Someone cried softly in a corner. But no one spoke to him. Not directly. Every now and then someone would glance his way. Quick. Curious. Cautious. Jamal stared at the floor. He had done what he was supposed to do. He stopped. He helped. He stayed. And now, he was just a man in a chair. After a while, he wasn't sure how long, a young nurse stepped out from a hallway. She had short hair and tired eyes, the kind that had seen too many long shifts. She looked around the room. Then her eyes landed on him. She hesitated, then walked over. "Sir?" she said. Jamal looked up. "Yes, ma'am?" "You were at the accident?" she asked. Jamal nodded. "Yes." She studied him for a second longer than necessary. Not in suspicion. Not exactly. In confusion. "Come with me," she said finally. Jamal stood and followed her down the hallway. The sounds changed as they moved deeper into the building. The waiting room noise faded, replaced by quieter things, machines beeping, footsteps echoing, voices speaking in careful tones. They stopped near a set of double doors. The nurse turned to him. "The woman," she said. "She's stable." Jamal felt his shoulders drop just slightly. "And the man?" he asked. Her expression shifted. "He's in surgery," she said. "Internal injuries. It's serious." Jamal nodded slowly. "Is he gonna make it?" The nurse hesitated. "I don't know," she said honestly. Silence settled between them. Jamal looked down the hallway, as if he might see them from where he stood. "She asked about him?" he asked. The nurse shook her head. "She's not fully aware yet. Head trauma. Memories not clear." Jamal swallowed. "Can I see her?" The nurse's brow furrowed. "Are you family?" There it was again. The same question. The same wall. Jamal shook his head. "No." She hesitated. He could see the decision forming in her mind. Rules, policies, boundaries. Then something softened. "Just for a minute," she said quietly. "Room 112. But you didn't hear that from me." Jamal nodded. "Thank you." He walked down the hallway slowly, each step echoing softly against the floor. Room 112. The door was slightly open. He pushed it gently. Inside, the light was dimmer. Evelyn Whitaker lay in the hospital bed, her head bandaged, her body still. Machines surrounded her, blinking softly, measuring things Jamal didn't understand. For a moment, he thought she was asleep. Then her eyes opened, slowly. She turned her head toward him. Her gaze was unfocused at first, searching. "Hello?" she said, her voice thin, uncertain. Jamal stepped closer. "Hi, ma'am," he said softly. She looked at him, really looked this time. Confusion settled across her face. "Do I know you?" she asked. Jamal paused. He could have said no. That would have been easier. Cleaner. Instead, he said the truth. I was there, he said. At the accident. I helped you. Her brow furrowed slightly. Accident. She looked around the room, taking in the machines, the walls, the unfamiliar space. Where am I? She whispered. You're in the hospital, Jamal said gently. You're safe. Her breathing quickened just a little. My husband, she said. Where is he? Jamal felt the weight of that question settle deep in his chest. He's here, he said. They're taking care of him. She stared at him. Fear flickered in her eyes. I don't remember, she said. I don't remember what happened. That's okay, Jamal said. You don't have to right now. She was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question that changed everything. Am I alone? Jamal stood there, a stranger, in a room that wasn't his, in a story that didn't belong to him. He thought about the waiting room, the looks, the distance, the way people had already decided where he fit and where he didn't. He thought about walking away, about going back to his truck, about leaving this behind. Then he looked at her, at the fear in her eyes, at the way her hand gripped the edge of the blanket like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. And he knew. No, ma'am, Jamal said quietly. You're not alone. She looked at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, her hand reached out. Jamal hesitated. Just for a second. Then he took it. Her grip was weak, but it held. And in that moment, in that quiet hospital room under those bright, indifferent lights, Jamal Carter stopped being just a man who passed by. He became something else. Something he hadn't planned. Something he wasn't ready for. And somewhere deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. Jamal didn't leave right away. Even after Evelyn's hand loosened its grip and her eyes drifted closed again, even after the steady rhythm of the machines reassured him she was still there, still breathing, he stayed. He sat in the chair beside her bed, elbows resting on his knees, hands clasped together, staring at the floor like he was trying to find answers written somewhere between the tiles. The room was quiet now. Too quiet. Just the soft hum of machines and the faint whisper of air moving through vents. Jamal had spent most of his life in noise, construction sites, traffic, voices overlapping, life pushing forward whether you were ready or not. This kind of quiet, it gave your thoughts too much space. He stood after a while, careful not to make a sound, and stepped out into the hallway. The door clicked softly behind him. The hospital looked different at night. The bright chaos of the afternoon had faded into something slower. Dimmer lights, fewer voices, long stretches of empty corridors that seemed to go on forever. Jamal walked without a clear direction, hands in his pockets now, shoulders slightly hunched, like he was trying to make himself smaller in a place that already made him feel out of place. He passed a nurse's station where two women spoke in hushed tones. Their conversation paused for a second as he walked by. Not rude, not obvious, just enough to be noticed. He kept walking. Eventually, he found himself back near the waiting area. The same plastic chairs, the same muted television. Only now fewer people. A vending machine hummed quietly in the corner. Jamal leaned against the wall, staring at it for a moment, before digging into his pocket for loose change. He fed the machine slowly, pressing the button for a bottle of water. It dropped with a dull clunk. He twisted the cap open and took a long drink. The water was cold, clean. It grounded him, for a second. Then the thoughts came back. Richard, still in surgery. Evelyn, alone in that room. Except she wasn't. Not anymore. And that was the problem. Jamal let out a slow breath. "This ain't your place, he muttered to himself. He said it quietly, but it felt loud. He had done what he was supposed to do. Stopped, helped, stayed until the ambulance came. That should have been enough. That was always enough. Except now, it didn't feel like it. The words she said echoed in his head. "Am I alone?" He tightened his grip on the bottle. "No," he whispered under his breath. "You're not." The next morning came too fast. Jamal must have dozed off in the chair at some point because he woke to the sound of footsteps and distant voices. The light in the hallway had shifted, softer, warmer. Morning. He sat up slowly, his back stiff, his neck aching. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then it all came back. He stood, stretching carefully, and made his way back to room 112. Evelyn was awake. She was sitting up slightly now, propped against pillows, her eyes clearer than the night before, but still searching. She looked at him as he entered. Recognition flickered. Faint. "You came back," she said. Jamal nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." She studied him for a moment, then asked, "Did you stay here all night?" Jamal shrugged slightly. Didn't have anywhere else to be. That wasn't entirely true, but it felt like it. Evelyn's hands rested in her lap, fingers lightly curled. "They told me I was in an accident," she said slowly. "I remember pieces, but not enough to make sense of it." Jamal stepped closer, keeping his voice gentle. "That's normal," they said. "It'll come back. Just takes time." She nodded, though her expression didn't fully trust the answer. "My husband," she said. "Richard." Jamal hesitated. "He's still in surgery," he said. "Doctors are working on him." She looked down, her hands tightening slightly. "He doesn't like hospitals," she murmured, almost to herself. "He always said they smell like worry." Jamal didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. A nurse stepped into the room a moment later, clipboard in hand. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitaker," she said with a polite smile. Evelyn looked up. "Good morning," she replied softly. The nurse checked a few things, adjusting the IV, glancing at the monitor. Then her eyes shifted to Jamal. "And you are?" she asked. Jamal opened his mouth, then paused. What was he? Not family, not a friend, not anything that made sense on paper. "I'm just helping," he said finally. The nurse gave a small nod, but her expression stayed neutral. "Well," she said, "visiting hours will be limited today. We'll need to run some more tests." Jamal nodded. "I understand." He stepped back slightly, giving them space. But he didn't leave. Not yet. Hours passed. Tests came and went. Doctors spoke in careful language that didn't quite answer anything directly. Evelyn's memory faded in and out like a radio signal. Sometimes she recognized him. Sometimes she didn't. Each time she asked the same questions. Where am I? What happened? Where is my husband? And each time, Jamal answered, patient, steady, never rushing her, never showing the exhaustion building behind his eyes. By the afternoon, a doctor pulled Jamal aside in the hallway. "Mr. Carter, Mr. Carter," the doctor said, flipping through a chart. "We're preparing to discharge Mrs. Whitaker within the next day or two." Jamal frowned slightly. "Discharge?" "Yes," the doctor said. "Physically, she's stable, But cognitively, he paused. She can't be on her own. Jamal's chest tightened. What does that mean? It means she needs supervision, the doctor said. Memory issues, confusion. She could forget to take medication, forget where she is. It's not safe. Jamal nodded slowly. And her husband? Still in a coma. And family? The doctor sighed lightly. We've been trying to reach her son. No response yet. If we can't get in touch with someone soon, he hesitated. We'll have to transfer her to a care facility. Jamal felt something drop in his stomach. How far? About 2 hours from here. 2 hours. For a woman who couldn't remember where she was, who woke up afraid, who asked if she was alone. Jamal looked back toward the room. Evelyn was sitting there, staring out the window like she was trying to recognize a world that had moved on without her. He turned back to the doctor. When? He asked. Soon, the doctor said. We don't have the capacity to keep her here long term. Jamal nodded. All right. The doctor gave him a polite nod and walked away. Jamal stood there for a long moment, thinking about what made sense, about what didn't, about what was his responsibility and what wasn't. Then he walked back into the room. Evelyn turned as he entered. Did they say anything? She asked. Jamal looked at her, really looked at her, at the confusion, at the quiet fear she tried not to show, at the way her hands gripped the blanket again. Like before. Like that moment. Am I alone? He took a slow breath. They're gonna let you leave soon, he said. Her eyes widened slightly. Leave? She repeated. To where? Jamal didn't answer right away, because he knew the truth, and he knew what it would sound like. A place far away, full of strangers, cold rooms, no familiar faces, no one to answer when she asked the same question again. He swallowed, then said the only thing he could. I'll figure something out. Evelyn watched him closely. Why are you helping me? She asked. Jamal hesitated, then gave the simplest answer he had. Because I was there. She held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded, as if that was enough. And in that moment, Jamal Carter made a decision. Not out loud, not with words, but with something deeper, something heavier. He wasn't going to let her be sent away. Not like that. Not alone. Even if it didn't make sense. Even if it changed everything. Even if it cost him more than he could afford. Because sometimes, doing the right thing didn't come with a plan. It just came with a choice. And he had already made his. Jamal didn't say it out loud at first. He didn't need to. The decision settled into him the way heat settles into concrete. Slow, heavy, impossible to ignore once it's there. The next morning, he stood in the hospital hallway with his hands in his pockets, staring at the floor while a nurse handed him a clipboard. Just sign here, she said. Temporary discharge acknowledgement. Jamal looked at the paper. His name didn't belong on it. Nothing about this situation made sense on paper. Family member? The nurse asked, pen hovering. Jamal shook his head. No, ma'am. She paused, then wrote something in the margin. Caretaker, she said quietly, more to herself than to him. Jamal signed. The pen felt heavier than it should have. By noon, Evelyn Whitaker stood at the edge of the hospital entrance, wrapped in a borrowed cardigan, blinking against the sunlight like the world outside had become too bright. Jamal stood beside her, one hand lightly hovering near her arm, not touching, but ready. She looked around slowly. This isn't where I live, she said. No, ma'am, Jamal replied gently. Then, where are we going? Jamal hesitated for half a second. Then he said it. "You're coming with me." She turned her head toward him, confusion flickering again in her eyes. "Do I know you?" Jamal gave a small nod. "I'm Marcus," he said, then caught himself, shook his head slightly. "Jamal, I've been helping you." Evelyn studied his face like she was trying to place him in a memory that wouldn't stay still. Then, just like before, she accepted it. "All right," she said softly, "if you say so." The drive back felt longer than it should have. Jamal kept both hands on the wheel, eyes forward, his mind running through 100 things he hadn't planned for. What she would eat, where she would sleep, what would happen if her condition got worse, what people would say. He already knew the answer to that last one. They pulled into his neighborhood just as the afternoon light began to soften. It wasn't the kind of place people noticed. Small houses, faded paint, yards that needed work, cars that had seen better years. The kind of street you passed through, not one you stopped in. Jamal parked in front of his house. A small wooden place with a sagging porch and a screen door that never quite closed all the way. Evelyn looked at it quietly. "This is your home?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." She stepped out slowly, her movements careful, uncertain. Jamal stayed close, ready in case she lost her balance. The porch creaked under their weight. Jamal opened the door and stepped inside first, holding it open for her. The house was simple. One bedroom, a couch that had become more bed than furniture, a small kitchen with mismatched dishes, a television in the corner that picked up only a few channels on a good day. It wasn't much, but it was clean, and it was his. Evelyn stepped inside, her eyes moving slowly across the room. "This doesn't look like my house," she said again. "No, ma'am," Jamal replied. "It's not." "Then why am I here?" Jamal took a breath. "Because you needed somewhere safe." She looked at him, longer this time, and again, something in her softened. "Safe," she repeated quietly. Jamal nodded. "Yes, ma'am." That seemed to settle something in her, not understanding, but acceptance. He guided her to the bedroom, the only real one in the house. He had already made the decision before they even left the hospital. She would take the bed. He would take the couch. There was no question about it. "You can rest here," he said. Evelyn sat down slowly on the edge of the bed, her hands smoothing the blanket like she was trying to make sense of something through touch. Jamal stepped back, giving her space. "I'll be right outside if you need anything," he added. She nodded faintly. "Thank you, Jamal." He paused at the doorway. That was the first time she said his name without hesitation. "Of course," he said softly. He stepped out and closed the door halfway. The house felt different now. Not louder, not busier, but fuller, like something had shifted in the air itself. Jamal walked into the kitchen and opened the fridge. Not much inside. A carton of eggs, half a loaf of bread, some leftovers he couldn't quite remember making. He stared at it for a moment, then closed the door. He'd figure it out. He always did. Outside, the neighborhood had already started to notice. Curtains moved. Front doors opened just enough for someone to stand in the shadow and watch. A black man bringing home an older white woman. In a place like this, that didn't go unnoticed. Jamal could feel it without even stepping outside. The questions, the assumptions, the stories already being built. He leaned against the kitchen counter and closed his eyes for a moment. "Just do what's right," he muttered under his breath. That had always been enough before, hadn't it? A soft sound came from the bedroom. Jamal straightened immediately and walked back. Evelyn stood in the doorway now, holding onto the frame like she wasn't sure if the ground would stay still beneath her. I can't remember where anything is, she said. Her voice was smaller now, more fragile. Jamal nodded. That's all right, he said. You don't have to remember everything right now. She looked at him again, that same question sitting just behind her eyes. Am I alone? Jamal stepped a little closer. I'm here, he said. That seemed to be enough, for now. He led her to the kitchen table and helped her sit down. I'm going to make something to eat, he said. You hungry? She nodded faintly. I think so. Jamal moved around the kitchen, pulling out what little he had. Eggs, toast, simple. He worked quietly, the sounds of the pan and the stove filling the space in a way that felt almost normal. Almost. Evelyn watched him the whole time. Not suspicious, just present, like she was trying to understand something she couldn't quite name. Have you done this before? She asked. Jamal glanced over his shoulder. Cook? He said with a small shrug. Yeah. She shook her head slightly. No. I mean, this. Jamal paused, then went back to the stove. Not like this, he admitted. She nodded slowly. I didn't think so. They ate in quiet, not uncomfortable, just unfamiliar. Every few minutes, Evelyn would look around like she was seeing the room for the first time all over again. And every time, Jamal stayed. Even when it didn't make sense. Even when he felt the weight of everything he had just taken on pressing down harder. Because outside, the whispers were already starting. And inside, a stranger sat at his table, trusting him like she had nowhere else to go. Jamal Carter had made his choice. But as the sun dipped lower and the shadows stretched across his small house, he began to understand something else. Making the choice was the easy part. Living with it. That was where everything changed. The first night passed in fragments. Jamal didn't sleep so much as drift in and out of awareness, his body stretched across the couch, one arm hanging off the side, his mind never fully letting go. Every sound pulled him back, floorboards shifting, pipes ticking, the faint rustle of movement from the bedroom. Each time he opened his eyes, each time he listened, each time he stayed. Just before dawn, he heard it again. A soft shuffle, then a voice. Richard? Jamal sat up instantly. The room was dim, washed in the gray-blue light of early morning. He swung his feet onto the floor and moved toward the bedroom door, already knowing what he'd find. Evelyn stood in the hallway, barefoot. Her hand rested against the wall like she needed it to stay upright. Her eyes were open, but lost. Ma'am? Jamal said gently. She turned toward him, startled. Where is he? She asked, her voice trembling now. He was just here. We were driving. Her breath caught. The car, she whispered. Something happened. Jamal stepped closer, slow, careful. You're okay, he said. You're safe. You're at my house. She shook her head. No, this isn't right. This isn't... Her voice broke. Jamal reached out, not touching her yet, just close enough. You were in an accident, he said softly. You hit your head. That's why things feel mixed up. She stared at him. Fear filled the spaces where memory should have been. My husband, she said again. Where is Richard? Jamal hesitated, just for a second. Then he said the only thing that would hold her together. He's at the hospital, he said. The doctors are taking care of him. Her breathing slowed, but only slightly. I need to see him, she whispered. You will, Jamal said. Just not right now. You need to rest. She looked at him for a long moment, searching, measuring. Then, quietly, Are you staying? She asked. Jamal nodded. I'm right here. That seemed to settle something. Not completely, but enough. He guided her back to the bedroom, helped her sit, waited until she lay down again. He stayed in the doorway until her breathing evened out, until her grip on the blanket loosened. Only then did he step away. Morning came fully after that. Sunlight crept through the windows, warming the small space, turning the house from something uncertain into something almost peaceful. Almost. Jamal stood in the kitchen, pouring coffee into a chipped mug, staring out the window. Across the street, Mrs. Green stood on her porch. She wasn't subtle. She never had been. Her arms were crossed, her eyes fixed directly on his house, watching. Jamal looked away. He had seen that look before. Curiosity mixed with something sharper. Judgment that hadn't yet found the words to speak itself out loud. He took a sip of coffee. It tasted bitter. Behind him, Evelyn moved slowly into the kitchen. She looked better in the daylight. Still fragile. Still uncertain. But present. "Good morning," she said, her voice softer now. Jamal nodded. "Morning." She glanced around the room again, taking it in like she was piecing together a puzzle she didn't remember starting. "You live here alone?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." She nodded slowly. "That must be quiet." Jamal gave a small shrug. "You get used to it." She studied him for a moment, then said something that landed heavier than she probably realized. "No one should get used to being alone." Jamal didn't answer, because he had, for a long time. The rest of the morning passed in careful routines, simple things. Breakfast, medication, sitting on the porch for fresh air. But the world outside had already begun to shift. People slowed their cars as they passed. Not enough to stop. Just enough to look. A man at the end of the block pretended to check his mailbox twice. Two women walking by lowered their voices as they passed the house. Jamal didn't need to hear the words. He knew the shape of them. He had lived inside those assumptions his whole life. By afternoon, it wasn't just looks anymore. It was action. A knock came at the door. Firm. Measured. Jamal stood from the kitchen table, already knowing who it might be. He opened the door. Two officers stood on the porch, same ones from the accident. Same faces. Same careful distance. "Mr. Carter?" the older one said. Jamal nodded. "Officer?" "We need to talk." Jamal stepped outside, pulling the door mostly closed behind him. "What's this about?" he asked. The younger officer glanced past him briefly, trying to see inside. "We've had some calls," he said. "Calls?" Jamal repeated. "Concerned citizens," the older officer added. "About the woman staying here." Jamal felt his jaw tighten. "She's recovering," he said. "Hospital discharged her." "And you're taking care of her?" the younger one asked. "Yes." The officers exchanged a glance. Jamal had seen that look before. Too many times. "We need to ask you directly," the older officer said. "What's your relationship to her?" Jamal didn't answer right away. Not because he didn't know, but because no answer sounded right. "I don't have one," he said finally. The younger officer frowned. "You don't have one, but she's living in your house." "I told you," Jamal said, keeping his voice steady. "I found them at the accident. Her husband's in a coma. She had nowhere to go." "And you just brought her here?" "Someone had to." Silence stretched between them. The older officer stepped a little closer. "Mr. Carter," he said carefully, "you understand how this looks, right?" Jamal met his eyes. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I understand exactly how it looks." And? The officer pressed. Jamal exhaled slowly. I'm the man who didn't drive away, he said. That's all. The words hung there. Simple. Clear. Not enough, because for some people, they never were. The younger officer shifted his weight. Are you receiving any kind of compensation? He asked. Money, property, anything like that? Jamal shook his head. No. Have you accessed any of her accounts? No. Do you plan to? Jamal stared at him for a long second, then said, I don't even know what she remembers from 1 hour to the next. The officers didn't respond right away. Instead, they wrote something down. More notes, more records, more pieces of a story that could be told 100 different ways, depending on who was listening. We're going to verify everything, the older officer said. Talk to the hospital. Make sure everything checks out. Do what you need to do, Jamal replied. The officers nodded once, then turned and walked back to their car. Jamal stood on the porch, watching them go. The engine started. The car pulled away. But the feeling didn't leave. Inside, Evelyn sat quietly at the table. She looked up as he came back in. Who was that? She asked. Jamal hesitated, then said the truth. Police. Her eyes widened slightly. Did I do something wrong? Jamal shook his head. No, ma'am. She studied him again, longer this time, then said softly, Then why do they look at you like that? Jamal didn't answer right away. He walked to the sink, turned on the water, rinsed his hands slowly even though they were already clean. Because he knew the answer. He just didn't know how to say it out loud. Finally, he turned back. Because they don't understand, he said. Understand what? Jamal met her eyes. That sometimes people do things for no reason. Evelyn tilted her head slightly. I think they're wrong, she said. Jamal let out a quiet breath. Yeah, he murmured. Me too. But as he stood there, in that small kitchen, with the weight of the town pressing in from every direction, he realized something else. This wasn't going to get easier. Not tomorrow. Not the next day. Because in a place like this, kindness didn't always look like kindness. Sometimes, it looked like something people were afraid of. And fear had a way of turning even the simplest truth into something dangerous. By the next morning, the truth had already twisted into something else. Jamal could feel it before he even stepped outside. It was in the silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that followed whispers. The kind that waited for something to happen. He stood on the porch with a mug of coffee, watching the road like he always did. Same cracked pavement, same slow-moving cars, same neighbors pretending not to look. Only now, they were looking, Mrs. Green didn't wave anymore. The man across the street didn't nod. A car slowed down, paused just a second too long, then kept moving. Jamal took a sip of his coffee. It had gone cold. Inside, Evelyn sat at the small kitchen table, staring at a photograph she had picked up from the counter. It wasn't hers. It was one of Jamal's, his mother, smiling beside a much younger version of him. Who is she? Evelyn asked when he stepped back in. My mother, Jamal said. She looks kind, Evelyn murmured. Jamal nodded once. She was. Evelyn ran her finger lightly across the edge of the frame. Where is she now? Gone, Jamal said quietly. Long time ago. Evelyn nodded slowly. I'm sorry. Jamal didn't answer. He didn't need to. A low rumble broke through the stillness outside. Different from the usual. Smoother. He turned toward the window. A black SUV rolled slowly down the street. Clean. Polished. Out of place. It didn't belong here. It slowed as it approached his house, then came to a stop right in front. Jamal's grip tightened slightly around his coffee mug. "Stay here," he said softly. Evelyn looked up, confusion flickering again. "Who is it?" Jamal didn't answer, because he already knew. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Tall, well-dressed, mid-40s. His shirt crisp, his shoes too clean for a road like this. He didn't rush. He didn't hesitate. He just stood there for a moment, looking at the house like he was trying to understand how it could possibly be real. Then his eyes lifted, locked onto Jamal, and in that single glance, Jamal felt it. Judgment. Not loud, not angry, just certain. Jamal set the mug down slowly and stepped outside, closing the door behind him. The two men stood facing each other across a few feet of worn grass. Different worlds, different lives. One moment that had pulled them into the same story. "You Jamal Carter?" the man asked. His voice was controlled, polished, used to being listened to. "Yes." The man nodded once. "I'm Daniel Whitaker." Jamal didn't react. But something inside him shifted. Of course. The sun. Daniel took a slow look around the yard again. The peeling paint, the uneven porch, the old truck sitting to the side. "This is where my mother's been staying?" he asked. Jamal kept his voice steady. "Yes." Daniel exhaled through his nose. Not relief. Something else. "You brought her here," he said. It wasn't a question. Jamal nodded. "She needed somewhere to go." Daniel's jaw tightened. "You should have waited for family." Jamal met his eyes. "We tried calling." "I was out of the country," Daniel snapped. "Business." Jamal didn't respond right away. Then, quietly, "Your father's been in a coma for days," he said. "Your mother's been asking for someone who didn't come." The words landed, hard. Daniel's eyes flickered, just for a second. Then the walls came back up. "You don't know anything about my situation," he said coldly. "You're right," Jamal replied. "I don't." Silence stretched between them, heavy. Then the front door creaked open. Evelyn stepped out, her hair slightly uncombed, her expression soft and uncertain. She looked between the two men. "Jamal," she said quietly, "what's going on?" Daniel turned, and just like that, everything changed. His posture shifted, his face softened. "Mom," he said. Evelyn blinked. She stared at him, searching, confused. For a moment, nothing. Then something clicked. "Johnny?" she whispered. Daniel crossed the yard in 2 quick steps and wrapped his arms around her. She hesitated, then slowly held on. "You're here," she said. "I'm here," he replied, his voice lower now, more human. Jamal stood back, watching, not part of it. Never part of it. Evelyn pulled back, studying Daniel's face like she was trying to memorize it. "You took so long," she said. Daniel swallowed. "I came as fast as I could." She nodded, though it wasn't clear if she understood. Then she glanced back at Jamal. "He's been helping me," she said. Daniel followed her gaze. His expression hardened again. "I'm sure he has," he said. The words sounded polite, but they weren't. Jamal felt it, clear as anything. Suspicion. Daniel stepped slightly forward, positioning himself just enough to stand between his mother and Jamal. Protective. Or maybe defensive. "I need to understand something," Daniel said, his tone sharpening again. "Why exactly is my mother living here?" Jamal didn't flinch. "The hospital was going to send her to a facility," he said. 2 hours away. She didn't even remember where she was. Didn't seem right. "So you just decided to take her in?" Daniel pressed. "Yes." Daniel stared at him. Long, measuring, judging. "Do you know who we are?" he asked. Jamal shook his head. "No." "My father built one of the largest engineering firms in the country," Daniel said. "My family has resources." "That's good for you," Jamal replied calmly. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. "What I'm saying," he continued, "is that situations like this, they attract the wrong kind of attention." Jamal didn't move, didn't look away. "What kind of attention?" he asked. Daniel hesitated, then said it. "The kind where people take advantage." The air shifted, subtle, but real. Jamal let out a slow breath, then stepped forward just enough to meet him directly. "I didn't know who your parents were when I pulled them out of that car," he said quietly. "Didn't know at the hospital. Didn't know when she asked me if she was alone." Daniel didn't respond. Jamal continued. "I helped because someone needed help," he said. "That's it." Daniel studied him, searching for something. A crack, a lie, anything that made sense in the world he understood. Then, slowly, he reached into his jacket, pulled out an envelope. Thick, crisp. He held it out. "For your time," Daniel said. The words landed heavier than anything else. Jamal looked at the envelope, then back at Daniel. "I don't want that," he said. Daniel frowned slightly. "It's not charity," he said. "It's compensation." Jamal shook his head. "I didn't do a job," he said. "I helped people." Daniel's grip tightened just slightly. "Everyone wants something," he said. Jamal met his eyes, still, unshaken. "Then I guess I'm not everyone," he replied. Silence fell. Deep. Heavy. No one moved. Not Daniel. Not Evelyn. Not even the wind. And in that moment, something cracked. Not loud. Not obvious. But enough. Because for the first time, Daniel Whitaker didn't know what to say. And Jamal Carter stood there, with nothing to offer but the truth. And somehow, that was the one thing Daniel couldn't buy. The envelope stayed in Daniel's hand a second too long. The wind picked up just enough to stir the dust along the edge of the yard, brushing against their shoes, moving between them like something trying to break the silence. But nothing broke it. Jamal didn't reach for the money, didn't even look at it again. He just stood there, steady, grounded in something that didn't shift the way everything else around him seemed to. Daniel slowly lowered his hand. Not all the way, just enough to feel the weight of it again. "You're serious," he said. Jamal nodded once. "I told you." Daniel let out a short breath, almost a laugh, but not quite. "I've spent my entire life dealing with people," he said. "Contracts, negotiations, leverage. Everyone has something they want." Jamal leaned slightly against the porch railing. "Maybe you're just used to the kind of people who do," he said. Daniel looked at him again. Really looked this time. Not just the clothes, not just the house, but the man, and for the first time, there was something unfamiliar in his expression. Not respect, not yet, but confusion. Evelyn shifted slightly beside him. "Johnny," she said softly, touching his arm. "Don't talk to him like that." Daniel glanced at her, his face softening for a moment. "I'm just trying to understand," he said. "Then listen," she replied. The words were simple, but they landed. Daniel went quiet. Jamal stepped back toward the door. "I think you should take her back to the hospital," he said. "She's been asking about your father." Daniel nodded slowly. "I already arranged that," he said. "Private nurse, transport, everything set." "Of course it was." Jamal gave a small nod. "That's good." Evelyn looked between them. "Are you coming?" she asked Jamal. The question caught both men off guard. Daniel turned slightly. "She's talking to you," he said. Jamal hesitated. He didn't belong there. Not anymore. Maybe he never had. "I'll come by later," he said gently. Evelyn frowned slightly. "You promise?" Jamal met her eyes. "I promise." That seemed to settle it. Daniel helped her back toward the SUV. His movements careful now, controlled, protective. Jamal watched as the door closed behind her, as the engine started, as the vehicle pulled away from the curb and disappeared down the road. And just like that, the house felt empty again, quieter than it had ever been. Jamal stood on the porch for a long time after they left, long enough for the sun to shift, long enough for the whispers to return. Because now, they had something new to talk about. A rich man in a suit, a confrontation, an envelope that never changed hands. The story was growing, and Jamal could feel it moving beyond him. He stepped back inside. The kitchen still smelled faintly of coffee and toast. The chair Evelyn had sat in was pushed back slightly, like she had just stood up. Jamal stared at it for a moment, then pulled it back into place. The small, quiet act felt heavier than it should have. That night, the house didn't feel like his anymore. He sat on the porch again, the same way he had 100 nights before. Same chair, same view. But everything had changed. The road looked different now, like it had brought something into his life and then taken it right back out. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You did the right thing," he muttered. The words sounded hollow, because doing the right thing hadn't changed anything. Not really. The town still looked at him the same. The police still asked the same questions, and the man with money still saw him as a problem to be solved. Jamal closed his eyes. For a moment, he let himself feel it. The weight, the exhaustion, the quiet kind of anger that didn't shout, just sat there, waiting. Then he let it go because that wasn't who he was, never had been. The next morning, he woke up earlier than usual, didn't sleep much, didn't need to. He got dressed, grabbed his keys, and headed back to the hospital. The parking lot looked the same cracked lines, same faded paint, same people moving in and out without noticing each other. Jamal walked through the doors. This time, no one stopped him. No one asked questions. But the looks were still there. Quieter, sharper. He moved down the hallway, past the same rooms, the same corners, until he reached the ICU. He stopped outside the door. Through the small window, he could see him. Richard Whitaker. Still, machines surrounding him. A steady beep marking time that no one could control. Jamal stood there for a long moment, then pushed the door open. Inside, the air felt colder. He stepped closer to the bed. "You made it this far," Jamal said quietly. "That's something." No response. just the steady rhythm of the monitor. Jamal pulled a chair closer and sat down. "You got people waiting on you," he added. "Your wife. She's asking about you every day." Still nothing. But Jamal stayed, because that's what he did. He stayed. Minutes passed, then longer. And just when he was about to stand, a voice came from behind him. "You really don't know when to walk away, do you?" Jamal turned. Daniel stood in the doorway. No jacket this time, no distance, just him, watching. Jamal leaned back slightly in the chair. "No," he said. Daniel stepped inside slowly, closed the door behind him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Daniel looked at his father, then back at Jamal. "He asked about you," he said. Jamal frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "He's been unconscious for days," he said. "Barely responsive." Jamal nodded. "I know." Daniel took another step closer. "And the first thing he did when he started waking up," he said slowly, "was try to say something." Jamal didn't move. Daniel's eyes locked onto his. "He said there was a man," he continued, "on the road. Said that man didn't leave." The room went still. Jamal felt something shift in his chest. Not relief. Not yet. Something else. Daniel looked at him differently now. Still uncertain. Still guarded. But no longer certain. "And he kept saying it," Daniel added, "over and over." Jamal glanced at Richard. The old man didn't move, didn't speak. But something had changed. "You might want to be here when he wakes up," Daniel said quietly. Jamal looked back at him. "Why?" he asked. Daniel hesitated, then answered honestly. "Because whatever story I thought I understood," he said, "I don't think it's the right one anymore." Silence settled between them again. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was waiting. Waiting for something to surface. Waiting for something to finally be seen. And for the first time, Jamal Carter wasn't standing alone in it. But it didn't feel like comfort. Not yet. It felt like standing at the edge of something that hadn't fully revealed itself. Daniel didn't say anything else after that. He just gave a short nod, turned, and stepped out of the room, leaving Jamal alone again with the quiet hum of machines and the steady, fragile rhythm of Richard Whitaker's breathing. Jamal sat there for a while longer, watching, waiting. But nothing changed. Not yet. Eventually he stood, pulled the chair back in place, and walked out. The hallway felt colder this time, or maybe it was just him. Outside, the sky had already started to dim. The late afternoon light stretched long shadows across the parking lot, turning everything a shade deeper than it had been before. Jamal walked to his truck without looking around. Didn't check who was watching. Didn't care. He got in, started the engine, and drove. The road home felt longer than usual. Or maybe it was just quieter. His thoughts didn't race anymore. They settled, heavy, layered, like something was building underneath them, waiting for the right moment to break through. When he pulled into his driveway, the house looked exactly the same. Same porch, same worn boards, same door that never quite closed right. But it didn't feel the same. He stepped out, closing the truck door with a dull thud that echoed a little too loudly in the stillness. No one was outside now. No neighbors pretending to check their mail. No slow-moving cars. Just silence. Jamal stood there for a second, staring at the house like he was seeing it from a distance, like it belonged to someone else. Then he walked inside. The air was still, empty. The kind of empty that didn't just fill space, it pressed against it. He moved through the room slowly. The bedroom door was open now, the bed neatly made, untouched. The chair in the corner where Evelyn had sat was pushed in like she had never been there. But she had. He could feel it. In the quiet. In the way the house didn't echo the same. Jamal walked into the kitchen. The oatmeal container still sat on the counter. The same one he had opened that morning. He stared at it for a long moment, then reached out and closed the lid. A small thing. But it felt like something ending. He leaned against the counter, hands resting flat against the surface. For a second, just a second, he let himself feel it. The absence. The sudden drop from something that had meaning, back into something that didn't. He had spent most of his life alone. But this felt different, because now he knew what it was like not to be. That's what made it heavier. A knock broke the silence. Sharp. Unexpected. Jamal straightened immediately, his eyes moving toward the door. Another knock. Slower this time. He walked over and opened it. Mrs. Green stood on the porch. Her arms were crossed, her expression unreadable. "Evening," she said. Jamal nodded. "Evening." She glanced past him into the house, then back at him. "They took her," she said. Not a question, a statement. "Yes." Mrs. Green shifted slightly, her weight moving from one foot to the other. "People been talking," she said. Jamal didn't respond. He didn't need to. She continued anyway. "About you. About that whole situation." Jamal leaned against the doorframe. "I figured." She studied him, longer than she ever had before. "They don't understand it," she said. "No," Jamal replied quietly. "They don't." Mrs. Green nodded slowly, then said something unexpected. "I don't either." Jamal looked at her, not defensive, not angry, just honest. "That makes two of us," he said. She almost smiled. Almost. "Well," she said, adjusting her stance, "you better be careful." Jamal frowned slightly. "Careful of what?" Mrs. Green glanced down the street, then back at him. "When people don't understand something," she said, "they don't leave it alone." She turned and walked off the porch without another word. Jamal watched her go, then closed the door. The house fell quiet again. Night came fast after that. The kind of night that didn't bring peace, just stillness. Jamal sat on the porch with no lights on, the darkness wrapping around him like something familiar. The stars were out, same as always. But tonight, they felt further away. He leaned back in his chair, hands resting on his knees, and for the first time since everything started, he let himself ask the question. What now? There was no answer, just the sound of crickets in the distance, and the faint echo of something that had already changed him in ways he didn't fully understand yet. He stayed there for hours, not thinking, not moving, just sitting. Until his phone rang. The sound cut through the night like something urgent. Jamal reached into his pocket, frowning slightly as he looked at the screen. Unknown number. He answered anyway. "Hello?" A voice came through, calm, professional. "Mr. Carter?" Jamal straightened. "Yes." "This is County General Hospital," the voice said. "I'm calling regarding Mr. Richard Whitaker." Jamal's chest tightened. "What about him?" There was a brief pause, just enough to make the next words land heavier. "He's awake." Jamal sat up fully now. The world around him seemed to sharpen. "How is he?" He's stable, the voice replied. Disoriented, but responsive. And he's been asking for someone. Jamal's grip tightened on the phone. Who? Another pause, then. He described a man from the accident. Said that man stayed. Said he saved his wife. Jamal didn't speak. He didn't need to. He asked for you by name, the voice continued. We'd like you to come in. Silence filled the space between them. Jamal looked out into the dark road ahead. The same road that had started everything. The same road that had brought him here. I'll be there, he said. He stood slowly, slipping his phone back into his pocket. The night didn't feel as heavy anymore. Not empty. Not quiet. Different. Like something was about to shift. Something was about to be said. And this time, Jamal Carter wasn't the man being questioned. He was the one being called forward. And whatever came next was finally going to be heard. The hospital looked different at night. Quieter, but not peaceful. The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead, casting everything in that same pale glow that made time feel slower than it really was. Jamal pushed through the double doors, his boots echoing faintly against the polished floor. The receptionist glanced up at him, recognition flickering for a moment before she nodded him through without a word. No questions this time. No suspicion. Just a quiet understanding that something had changed. He moved quickly down the hallway, past the waiting room, past the vending machines, past the places where people sat with tired eyes and heavy hearts. The ICU doors came into view, and just outside them, Daniel stood waiting. He wasn't leaning on his phone, wasn't pacing. He was just standing there, still, like a man holding on to something fragile. When he saw Jamal, he straightened slightly. You came, he said. Jamal nodded. You called. Daniel swallowed, then gestured toward the door. He's awake, he said. He's been asking for you. Jamal paused, not out of hesitation, but because something inside him needed a second to catch up. Does he know where he is? Jamal asked. Mostly, Daniel replied. He's tired, but he's clear. Jamal looked at the door, then back at Daniel. You should go in first, he said. Daniel shook his head. No, he said quietly. He asked for you. The words landed differently this time. Not defensive, not guarded, just honest. Jamal nodded once, then pushed the door open. The room was dim. Machines blinked softly. The steady rhythm of the monitor filled the air. And in the bed, Richard Whitaker was awake. His eyes were open, clear, not confused, not distant, focused. He turned his head slightly as the door opened, and when he saw Jamal, something changed in his expression. Recognition, relief, something deeper. You, Richard said, his voice rough but steady. Jamal stepped closer. It's good to see you awake, he said. Richard let out a weak breath that almost sounded like a laugh. I was starting to think I imagined you, he said. Jamal shook his head. No, sir. I was there. Richard nodded slowly. I know, he said. I remember everything. The room seemed to grow quieter. Even the machines felt softer. Jamal pulled the chair closer and sat down. Richard watched him carefully. You didn't leave, Richard said. It wasn't a question. Jamal met his gaze. No, sir. Richard's eyes glistened slightly. I remember asking you to save my wife, he said. Jamal nodded. You did. And you did, Richard said. Jamal didn't answer. He didn't need to. Richard looked past him briefly, toward the door. "Daniel," he said. Jamal turned. Daniel stepped inside slowly, closing the door behind him. He didn't speak. He just stood there, watching. "Come here," Richard said. Daniel moved closer, stopping at the side of the bed. "You've been here?" Richard asked. Daniel nodded. "I got here as soon as I could." Richard studied him. Not harshly. Just fully. Then he nodded once. "Good," he said. Silence settled for a moment. Then Richard looked back at Jamal. "I need you to tell him," he said. Jamal frowned slightly. "Tell him what?" Richard's gaze didn't waver. "What you did," he said. "Out there." Jamal shifted slightly in his chair. "That's not necessary," he said. "It is," Richard replied firmly. Daniel's eyes moved between them. "What are you talking about?" he asked. Richard didn't break eye contact with Jamal. "Tell him," he said again. Jamal hesitated. Not because he was hiding anything, but because he didn't see it the way they did. Still, he spoke. "The car had flipped," Jamal said. "You were pinned. Your wife was bleeding. I called for help, stayed until they got there." Daniel frowned. "That's it?" he asked. Jamal shrugged slightly. "That's it." Richard shook his head. "No," he said quietly. "That's not it." The room stilled again. "I remember the heat," Richard continued. "The smell, the sound of metal, and then you." He looked directly at Daniel now. "This man crawled into that car," he said, "cut his hands on broken glass, took off his own shirt to stop your mother from bleeding." Daniel didn't move, didn't blink. Richard's voice grew stronger. "He stayed there," he said, "held pressure on her wound, talked to me so I wouldn't pass out, waited for help that took too long to come." Jamal looked down slightly. He hadn't thought about it like that. Hadn't needed to. Richard kept going. 20 more minutes, he said. "That's what the doctors told me. That's all it would have taken for her not to make it." Daniel's expression shifted. Not dramatically, but enough. "And he didn't leave," Richard said. "He could have. No one would have blamed him. No one would have even known." Silence filled the room again. But this time, it felt different. Heavier. Clearer. Richard reached out slowly, his hand trembling slightly. Jamal took it, without thinking. "You saved her," Richard said. Jamal shook his head. "I just did what I could." "No," Richard said again. "You did what most people don't." Daniel let out a slow breath. His shoulders dropped slightly, like something inside him had finally let go. "I thought," he started, then stopped. Jamal didn't look at him. Didn't need to. "I know what you thought," Jamal said quietly. Daniel nodded, ashamed now, not defensive. "I was wrong," he said. Jamal finally looked at him, really looked this time, and for the first time, Daniel didn't look like a man with power or control. He looked like someone who had misjudged something important, something real. "My father," Daniel said, his voice softer now. "He kept asking for you." Jamal glanced at Richard. The old man smiled faintly. "I needed to see the man who stayed," he said. Jamal didn't respond, because there wasn't anything to say. Not really. Some things you just felt. Daniel stepped closer. "I owe you an apology," he said. Jamal shook his head slightly. You were protecting your family, he said. No, Daniel replied. I was assuming the worst. The words hung in the air. Simple, honest, heavy. Richard watched them both, then said something that shifted everything again. You're not done here, he said. Jamal frowned slightly. What do you mean? Richard's grip tightened just a little. You didn't just save her life, he said. You changed mine. Jamal didn't understand. Not yet. But he could feel it. Something was building. Something bigger than any of them. And for the first time, the truth wasn't just something spoken quietly in a hospital room. It was something that couldn't be ignored anymore. Something that was about to move beyond these walls and into the world that had judged him before it ever knew his name. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. At first, it was just a conversation in a hospital room. Quiet. Contained. 3 men and a truth that had finally found its way into the open. But truth has a way of moving, of slipping past doors, through conversations, into the hands of people who weren't there, but needed to hear it anyway. It started with Daniel. He didn't sleep that night, didn't leave the hospital. He sat in the hallway outside his father's room, staring at nothing, replaying every moment since he had stepped out of that SUV, every word he had said, every assumption he had made, every look he had given Jamal. By morning, he knew something had to change. Not later, not eventually. Now. The hospital lobby was quiet when he walked through it. A few people sat scattered in chairs, their voices low, their eyes tired. Daniel stopped at the front desk. I need to speak to administration, he said. The woman behind the counter looked up. It's about a patient? She asked. It's about a man, Daniel replied, who deserves to be known. An hour later, people started listening. Doctors, nurses, administrators. Then, the police. Daniel told the story the way it actually happened, not the version shaped by suspicion, not the version built on assumptions. The truth. About the road. The heat. The overturned SUV. The man who could have driven away, but didn't. The man who stayed. The man who held his mother's life in his hands while waiting for help that came too slow. Some listened quietly. Some looked uncomfortable. But no one interrupted. Because once the truth starts, it doesn't need permission to keep going. By the afternoon, it had already reached beyond the hospital. A call to the local paper, another to a regional outlet. Daniel didn't exaggerate, didn't dramatize. He didn't need to. The truth was enough. His name is Jamal Carter, he said, and if you're going to tell this story, you're going to tell it right. Back in town, Jamal didn't know any of this. He woke up the next morning the same way he always had. Quiet. Still. Alone. He made his coffee, sat at the table, looked out the window. But something was different. Subtle. Almost unnoticeable. Until it wasn't. A car slowed down in front of his house. Then another. Not lingering. Not staring. Just noticing. Jamal frowned slightly, setting his cup down. Then, his phone rang. He didn't recognize the number, but he answered anyway. Hello? Mr. Carter? Yes. This is Melissa Grant with the county hospital. I just wanted to say, thank you. Jamal paused. For what? He asked. For what you did, she said simply. The line went quiet after that. No long explanation. No follow-up. Just recognition. Jamal lowered the phone slowly. Before he could process it, another call came in. Then another. Different voices. Different names. Same words. Thank you. By noon, the story had reached the town. Not whispered this time. Not twisted. Not questioned. Told. Clear. Direct. True. Jamal stepped out onto the porch, his phone still in his hand. Across the street, Mrs. Green stood there again. But this time, she didn't cross her arms, didn't look away. She raised her hand, small, careful, a wave. Jamal hesitated, then lifted his hand in return. It wasn't much, but it was something. And for the first time, it felt different. Not forced, not curious. Real. Later that afternoon, a car pulled into his driveway. Not sleek, not polished, just a simple sedan. Daniel stepped out, alone this time. Jamal watched him approach, his posture steady, his expression unreadable. But when Daniel reached the porch, he didn't hesitate. He didn't stand at a distance. He didn't measure his words. He stepped forward and extended his hand. "I was wrong," he said. Jamal looked at the hand, then at Daniel, then took it. The grip was firm, but not controlled, not calculated, just human. "I know," Jamal said quietly. Daniel let out a breath that almost sounded like relief. "My father told me something," he said. "He said, the most important thing a man can do is show up when it matters." Jamal nodded slightly. "He's right." Daniel glanced around the house. The worn boards, the patched roof, the small details of a life that had never been easy. Then back at Jamal. "I can't change everything," he said, "but I can make sure one thing is clear." "What's that?" Jamal asked. "That you're not invisible," Daniel said. The words landed deeper than anything else had, because for most of his life, that's exactly what Jamal had been. Daniel reached into his jacket. Jamal tensed slightly, but Daniel didn't pull out an envelope this time. He pulled out a small card, set it on the porch railing. "My parents want you to visit," he said, "not as someone who helped them." Jamal raised an eyebrow slightly. "Then what?" he asked. Daniel met his eyes. "As family." Silence settled between them again, but this time, it wasn't heavy. It wasn't waiting. It was open. Jamal looked down at the card, then back up. "I'll think about it," he said. Daniel nodded. "That's all I'm asking." He stepped back, turned, and walked toward his car. No pressure, no expectation. Just respect. Jamal stood on the porch long after the car pulled away, the card still resting on the railing, the house still quiet, the road still stretching out in front of him. But something had shifted. Not loud, not dramatic. Just enough. He picked up the card, turned it over in his hand. And for the first time, he let himself consider something he never had before. Not what he had done, not what he had been through, but what might come next. Because this wasn't about being seen anymore. Not really. It was about something deeper, something he had felt, but never named. Belonging. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the porch. Jamal sat down slowly, the chair creaking beneath him. Same house, same road, same man, but not the same life. Because everything had changed, the moment he didn't drive away. And as the light faded into evening, one thought settled quietly into place. He didn't stop to be seen. But for the first time in his life, he finally was. When Jamal Carter stood on that porch and refused the envelope, he wasn't just turning down money. He was holding on to something far more valuable, the truth of who he was when no one was watching. And in the end, that quiet choice spoke louder than anything wealth ever could. Sometimes the greatest cost of judgment isn't what it takes from others, it's what it blinds us from seeing. Because real character doesn't show up in comfort or status. It shows up in moments where there's nothing to gain and everything to lose. So the next time you see someone in a moment that doesn't quite make sense, pause before you decide who they are. You don't need to change the world. Just choose, like Jamal did, to act with integrity even when no one's keeping score. If this story meant something to you, comment 1 below. And tell me, have you ever done the right thing, even when it cost you something? There's another story coming next, and this one might make you question what helping someone really looks like.